back. It's Sunday night, so it must be time for another commentary with Michael Redmond, 9 on Professional. We are back with another AlphaGo versus AlphaGo. Thanks so much for joining us, Michael. Great to see you as always.
Hi, how are you
Sorry,
doing? Yes.
I should have given you a little bit more warning there.
Yeah, yeah.
I know you're up because we're starting an hour later, so
Right, yeah, right. Yeah.
oh, all good. Hey, a couple things before we jump into the game. We're about 6 weeks into this whole pandemic, and I'm just checking. I mean, of course, things in the States, a big fight going on now. People are sick of this. They want to, get out, and there's a big political fight over, whether it's time to start up again or not. How are things in Japan?
I think the laws are slightly different, but we are sort of locked up now,
Hmm.
and it looks like the numbers seem to be going down in Tokyo. I think it might be actually spreading out throughout the country a bit more, and so things are sort of going. They're not reducing to a great degree. So the at present we're shut down until the first after the first week of May. I think it's the 6th of May. That
Hmm.
after which things are supposed to get back to normal, but
Hmm.
they might be extending that. I don't know.
So, I mean, I know you're just hunkered down at home, just probably going out to shop. How is it? I was out over the weekend doing a little bit of shopping at my farmer's market and so forth. I mean, and it's very odd. I mean, everybody, you can't, you don't get any service if you don't have a mask. We went out for a walk, and everybody, sort of, avoiding each other on the paths. What's sort of day-to-day life there for you?
It's very much like that here also. Like the parks are probably more people than we were used to because we always went on walks in the park.
Yeah.
There's more people now, I think, because they don't have anything else to do, and on a good day, they feel they might be safer in a park, but it doesn't turn out to be like that because there's a lot of people there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, we tried to meet up with my son and his girlfriend. She's got asthma, so she's very, very concerned about being exposed. And we got to one of the parks, and she took one look, and there were all these people, and they weren't wearing masks. And she was like, "Yeah, I'm going home." Not good. Hey, so tournaments. I know tournaments were, all tournament play has been canceled for weeks now. You were mentioning before we came on the air something about study groups with the pros. What's going on?
Yeah, some of the younger pros, some of the top Japanese pros have set up some little tournaments that they're just doing on their own, just for the fun of it, you might say.
Hmm.
And they're broadcasting those. They are on the Go servers as well as some people are broadcasting them on YouTube.
Hmm.
So that's keeping people interested. It's not as if it's going to make much money, I don't think.
No, of course not. You, of course, have we've talked about been putting your energy, putting your time to good use, getting into the whole social media thing. And Stephen will put up your Twitter and YouTube links. I do have to talk to you about one of my favorite people, and yours too. Your mom, None. She's getting kind of with it too. You posted a lovely video from her the other day. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah, I had a lot of fun with that video. Well, she saw me tweet about my first time to meet Mr. Iwamoto, who
Mm.
was a Japanese professional who did a lot to promote Go overseas, as everyone should know. And so the first time I met him, and I told the story very briefly about that, and she thought I hadn't told it right, so she corrected that, and it
Yeah,
was wonderful. Like she took the video for the first time in her life. She did a self-taken video, and it didn't even need any editing. I didn't have to edit it at all. It was
your
already
mom is amazing. Can I just say, I mean, she's a force of nature, right?
right. Yes. So that was very. I just enjoy watching it myself, and I added on a little commentary on what the a life and death problem that had to do with it.
All right. Well, listen, check it out. Steven's going to put the link up there, but it's nice to see the whole Redmond family just sort of jumping in with both feet. That's cool stuff. And of course, we're going to have to get together and talk about Volume 2 of the AlphaGo to Zero. We will get going on that, but you can check out the existing book now, and Stephen will put up a link for that as well. I think they've been kind of flying off the shelf there with our good friends at Smart Go, Anders Kirov. All right, so we had a little historic game. We had a Michael Redmond game, and now we're back to working our way through, the last portion of the AlphaGo self-played games, and this is we're up to game 41.
Yep.
What's the overline on this?
Okay. Well, I think we start with a Chinese opening, so
Okay.
that's something unusual for computers, I suppose. But we're going to see a lot of 3 points. I think 2 maybe, and we're going to see some exciting fighting. So we're going to see some groups, and you'll be wondering if they're dead or alive.
I always do. Things are provisionally dead until otherwise determined. So just a reminder before we get started, folks, as always, on these live broadcasts, go ahead and hit us up with your questions or comments in the chat. I will keep an eye on that. Some of the more straightforward stuff, Stephen will answer, right away. But if there's something that I think Michael would be interested in, I will relay that to Michael, and we'll try and answer that. And frankly, when he poses me tough problems, I will probably get your help on that as well. So, all right, let's off to the races with game 41. Thanks for watching.
41. Okay, so we have
41.
this. The Chinese opening is pretty much no longer played because the modern computer programs usually give it a bad score. And black tends to have a lot of problems when white plays this attachment, which is sort of crazy. But it strangely works fairly well with programs like Lila and Kadago, Fine Art, I think, too. But white didn't play that way. This is the way a human player might play in this opening. And black dives into the 3 point. So it did play the Chinese opening, but after with this move, it's already playing very differently than a human player would play it.
Mm-hmm.
At least before AlphaGo. And so, as I've come to say recently, it doesn't really matter which side white plays when black dives into the 3 point. Like, usually you would expect white to be building a moyo in the area where white has more stones. So that would be the upper left area.
Sure.
And so you would be expecting white to be covering on this side maybe, and the old-fashioned way to do it would be to play this joseki, right? So this would be supposedly good for white because white's wall is pointing in the right direction.
Sure.
And then after AlphaGo, when black plays the direct 3 point like this, black is not going to play that hane on the second line, but is maybe or maybe not going to curl once more, and then it's going to play something on the side. And this pincer here that seems to be too close to white's wall is what I call the AlphaGo pincer. Black could also play something more close to the center of the side, like something like this would work perfectly fine. I think I get the feeling that AlphaGo likes to play this move and then peep here with something like this happening. For instance, something like this would be my idea of what AlphaGo likes to do. Just building a strong group there, putting some pressure on the white stones, and that wall of white stones is not really like if you have something like this coming up, you can see that the wall is being put under a lot of pressure there, and black is taking the offensive. So eventually white's going to be playing some moves on the second line here on the left, which are moves that white, anything in that area is just very painful for white to be playing, any move in that area. So it's turning into a painful fight for white, you might say. So this is the idea that black has. And so it doesn't really matter which side white plays the covers. And either way, white is probably going to play this knight's move and get into what I call an AI joseki, you might say. So up to this point, we're in the old AI joseki, and white plays away too. So locally, white will almost always play this move here, locally.
Quick question that somebody is wondering is that The idea of omitting the Hane connect in that Joseki that you were just showing.
Hmm. Yes. Okay. Well, it's
Did
very simple. The fact is that in the context of the games we used to play, let's just, I have no way of, I think I could add two stones, I guess. I could add two stones like this and say, if it's like this, and white already has a stone on the left side, this area is probably going to be white's territory anyway.
okay,
And so it makes sense for black to be playing this move. Just improving the corner, allowing white to consolidate that area that's going to be white's territory anyway. Because otherwise, if black plays away, white gets to play here and force against the corner. That's going to be painful. So when there's a white stone there on the left side of the board, it makes sense for black to be playing this exchange. And so that's the reason it used to be the Joseki, because almost all of the time we were playing in a context where white did have that stone on the left side of the board. So it made sense for black to play this Hanetsugi, this diagonal move on the second line. When that area was white's territory anyway, this is going to be a good exchange for black. But
okay,
in this position where white does not have a stone on the left side, black actually does not want to play that exchange because it would reinforce white's wall.
sure,
And in actuality, you can see that AlphaGo has ideas of attacking white here.
right,
And that was the humans for, I don't know, probably, decades at least, had been thinking in the context of black reducing white's territory, but never in the context of attacking the white wall. It was something we just never had the experience of playing this when there was no white extension on the left side. And so we just didn't think of the idea of attacking this wall was very alien and hard to grasp at first.
and here's what folks are wondering, and let me just ask it, and I think to what they're wondering is that leaving that out in the 3-3 Joseki, if that is obvious now, but I think part of the answer to that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean the 3-3s just didn't really get played that much in the past, right? I mean it was just not something you saw very often.
It was just an established idea that immediately invading was bad.
Right, right.
And it was very solidly like learning the game, you would be taught, and I was taught that invading immediately was bad.
Right.
And so you would have context. So like, for instance, I could make a variation saying something like this happens. Sorry. And like this, something like this. When white has a lot of stones on the side, and you know that if black plays away, this whole thing is going to turn into white territory. This is the kind of context where people thought that it was good to invade the 3-3 point. Because if something like this happens, all of these white stones that white spent to try to make territory on the left side have been wasted in a way.
Right.
And so this reduces white to the only option white has really is to cover on this side, and black gets a fairly, with forcing on say we get to this position, black is forced from above and from below. And so it's being very super efficient in this local fight. Like we have the same Joseki with these stones here, and then white has some stones here that are not very efficient.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the way we used to play the 3-3 point. We thought it was good if black could have this extra context that made white's wall redundant to a certain degree.
Mm.
But now, and so the idea of the 3-3 point in that context was just to reduce white's potential territory. Whereas nowadays, we're thinking in the context of actually not only taking away the corner territory, but looking at options to attack white if white plays this Joseki.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we see white changing changing at this point to play moves like this, or as in the game, playing this knight's move gives white a completely different joseki, which I am calling the AI joseki, the modern joseki, which is basically designed to give white a position that can deal with the fact that there's no stone on the side. So when white does not have any stone on either of these adjacent sides, white had to come up with something different from the traditional joseki that I was showing just now. Let's see if I can get it again. So this one, yeah. White had to find an alternative to this joseki. And so that's this one where white is going to play this move, if that's the local move, and get into a position where white has a much more solid. So like this would be like this. Maybe this kind of thing could happen. But in this case, the latter happens to favor white. So white would just play here. So actually, this would be perfectly okay for white. So I could go back a few moves. Maybe black's not going to cut there. But so like this could happen. This is also a fairly common joseki. And white would be building towards the upper left. And in this position, white does have a strong position with the potential cut here on the second line. White has a living shape, and there's no way for black to start attacking this wall. It's thickness. It's more thickness, and it's closer to white in the upper left. So if white plays a move something like this, it's easier for white to control the side also. So this is a way for white, an example of how white might play when there's no stone in the middle of the side. And we had to find all these new patterns basically are designed to work when there is no stone on the side. While the old pattern, which is this one, this pattern was designed to work actually when white had that stone at D10. So that's the big difference, where the new joseki sequences are designed to work without that stone in the middle of the side.
Cool. Good answer. Yeah, and I think it's another part of that is just the AI's sort of got a much higher comfort level with leaving things unfinished than traditionally.
This is the point where white has jumped into the upper right corner, where white could have played this local move. Also, this local move also is still actually feasible for white. Although this is a traditional, you might call it a classical variation of the 3-3 invasion, but it's better. It's slightly better for white because this wall here is 3 high. So if we get into this kind of variation, then it's just that much more difficult for black to play this peep. You might recall in the other variation, black was peeping. But in this case, if black plays the peep, white's going to be able to get in between these two stones. And so if black doesn't get the option to play that peep, it's going to be much more difficult for black to make an attack on the wall because of that. I actually talk about that in some of the videos on my YouTube channel.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I've done actually 3 videos on the 3-3 point invasion. Yeah. So those are the 3... 2 of them are the first videos of my AI Joseki playlist.
So check those out, folks, because those are really cool. And I think Stephen will put up a link for that. Okay,
so white pushes here. This is also a variation that was fairly common already. Like white could have connected, after which black's local move could be a knight's move here. And this is also a Joseki. But it's a bit more aggressive. It's a bit more, I think it's better to push here. I would push here. So black has, this is the game move. Black could also, at any point, could push through and cut here. And the pros and cons to this are that black does get, when black does it now, white will have to capture the 1 stone. White will capture the cutting stone in this case. So if black cuts on the left, white will capture that stone and have a very nice position on the outside. This is playable for white too. You might actually recognize the shape. It's the same as a joseki.
One that I even know.
So black will probably cut on this side, and black
Hmm.
gets this extra cut on the second line. So having this stone here, black is going to sacrifice that stone, because if black extends here, it's pretty useless because white's group in the corner is already alive. So black's not going to save that stone, but it's going to play a hane here and something like this. And there's an advantage to black that black does have that stone on the second line there, which is sometimes it's going to be a nuisance for white. It's going to be annoying. The weakness here is that these 4 stones that black is building a wall with, because black has pushed through there at this point, black has filled one of his own liberties. So when black is pushed through on the third line at the point at 1, black has filled one of his own liberties, and it's going to be a lot of trouble for black when white starts attacking on the outside.
Right.
And so there's pros and cons to it. And I've noticed that AlphaGo does not like to push through and cut there, and Leela doesn't like to either. So black simply plays the hane here. And the fact that black has not played that, the push through and cut here, means that it's not 100% guaranteed that white is going to answer that the same way. So it's going to depend on the game position sometimes. We'll be getting to a game position later in the game where the upper left area is going to be more important, and white might just sacrifice 2 stones there.
Wow.
And so there's more fluidity in the position. White has more flexibility too.
I'm loving that double hane.
Double hane is okay. Black could have extended, actually. Extending also works, but white's going to push here. And for the time being, like, white does get more space in the upper left.
Yeah, and you have to keep going, right? I mean, you can't.
Yeah. So even if white eventually puts a stone in here, it's going to be a very nice position that white has towards the upper left.
It's an interesting. So it's a little point, but it's important, right? I mean, people might be tempted. I mean, on one hand, the extending is simpler and safer, doesn't get you in trouble. On the other hand, I think it's always a question. When can you stop? Back away, right? So even with the 3, like shown with the 2, obviously, if you
so black here.
If you play away with it, the cut obviously is.
The cut, white would probably cut once.
Sure.
It is a very exciting position though. Like black has the cut here also. Black would probably protect once, and white would also protect. So it's not as if the cut is going to immediately put black in trouble, but white is going to make use of that cutting stone later. And just for some forcing moves from this area. I don't really know exactly what. White doesn't have any outstanding move at this point, but the whole fight will start from the lower right area, and eventually white will be using some kind of forcing move in that area. That's my
so it's some agi for later. There's nothing to do right away, right?
This is a stone that white probably doesn't want to try to save immediately, but white will be thinking in the terms of forcing black to put another stone in to capture it.
Right. And if you extend just a straight extension, and white keeps pushing, and you're tempted to, well, I suppose you can hane.
You can hane. I think at any point white's going to cut here, and the fact is,
same thing.
Even with 3 stones, these 3 stones here, they're still in dames and maris. So like if you have black playing from the outside, you still see black getting into trouble when white plays a key point here, for instance.
Right.
This is really exciting. This would be very tactical. I'm not sure exactly what would happen, but stuff like this it does look a bit worrying for black, I'd say, with these 3 stones.
Yeah.
Shape.
Yeah.
So wherever black plays a hane, white's going to cut anyway. And you can see that black, even when black plays the double hane immediately, it is the best move for white to cut once. Even though white's not going to necessarily save that stone. And white extends.
Nice.
So this makes sense. So black finally plays here. And white plays this move. At any point now, if black pushes through here and cuts on this side, in this variation, it's not likely to mount to very much. Like, even if black saves the one stone, black really needs um, some extra stones on the upper side to make this work. It's just too far away, and the fact that it is alive in the corner.
Yeah.
So in this case, black's main aim is probably to cut on the other side instead of this move. Sometimes black can cut on this side. And if we have a very solid, like if there was one or two more white stones in this area and it was a complete territory, then there would be cases where white could answer on the right and just kill everything. But in most cases, you really need some extra white stones. Like if there was a white stone here and a white stone here, I think it looks like it would be possible or a good idea in this case. But usually the default would be for white to capture the cutting stone. So to play here and give up the corner. So this is what you would usually expect to see. And because white has captured this stone to make the ponnuki shape here, it's going to make it a lot easier for white to form this whole area into a big territory. So it's not as if white's losing as much as you might have thought when white loses.
Right. It's also sente for white, yes?
Sente is important, yeah. So white plays here. This is a point where in the game, yeah, I'm not going to make a problem with this one. This move is where black played in the game.
Yeah, I would have found that one. I was thinking that was a big place to play. That looks like somebody made a mistake. Seriously?
And I made a variation for black to play here, actually. This is the big move in the lower left. It's a big move.
Yeah.
And, white would play here in the upper left corner. And after this, it would become very difficult for black to invade this whole area. And so this one move, white 4 in the upper left, is a very important move. And something like this would follow. It would be very difficult, relatively difficult for black to penetrate that area in the upper left, in the upper side.
Well, because you're just going to get a tap. I mean, you're not going to get life. Show them what happens if you try to just do a regular. I mean, can't even think of where you could invade. Well,
in this variation, this stone here becomes extremely valuable. And like the fact that white has this cut here, it sort of makes this invisible borderline where black is going to have trouble passing this line. That white stone that is being captured in the ladder gives white that extra forcing move. It does make it difficult for black to penetrate. So like black could be, let's get back into that variation. Black could come in here, but yes, black is just going to get into a lot of trouble. Even if white just plays something like this, you can see that this stone is sort of surrounded on a large scale. It's going to be very difficult for black to move out and find some friendly stone because there's no way black's going to make 2 eyes inside there.
I have to tell you, when I play Go now, your diagrams, it's like a football coach's. They do. I love them. I'm serious. I just love them. They're really, really useful. But so this move actually, this black move, now that you've explained it, makes a whole lot of sense. Even though at first it just looked really odd to me. But yeah,
it's just when white has all this strong position here, black really wants to try to make some eye space. So
sure,
like if black had played on the third line, this would look more normal maybe. I'm not sure whether white's going to play the knight's move, but for instance, something like this, and then something like this, and black would just not have enough room to make 2 eyes. Black would be running out into the center again. It's not as if black would die, but it would be black would be spending a lot of moves to save that group, and so it would be troublesome for black.
Well, and white, I mean, white would, of course, love to kill black, but white's already making territory on both sides. So this is fine for white, yeah?
Yeah, that's the plan for white. So
And
black,
and
yeah.
you know, and white, black obviously can live by going into 3/3, but that's just a gift.
You mean with this move? Coming to the 3/3, that's probably giving white a bit too much space.
Sure,
Like in
sure.
this case, white could probably even get away with the old Joseki. And black's not going to go in there. So we might even have black playing this one. This is just too much. It's too big on the side.
Yeah,
I
that's
think this
extra
is the
territory now.
when you should not invade the 3/3 point. Yes.
Yep, yep.
So black played here. So black's trying to make some space there. So if white had played something like this, I would expect something like this, where black does have pretty much a settled shape here. Has enough space to live on the side, I think. So it's just that much more space, because when black played the more normal approach move, you might say, at this point of playing here, black stones were on the F line here. Black was making a wall and then extending to this point. In this variation I'm showing you, black stones are one line to the left. So black is making a line of stones on the E line, and black is still extending to the same point.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one extra line for black. It's just that much more territory, more space to make eyes. So that's the idea here. And so white is just allowing black to live in the corner. This is actually a bit surprising, but it's a patient move, I guess. And black plays here. Now this is an interesting move, because you would usually expect black to play here, the 3/3 point.
C17, yeah, sure.
The problem with this is that covering at G18 is really big, coming on the second line here.
Ooh, ow.
When white does that, the next move at B16 is going to be forcing. So like,
Yeah.
probably is going to play here. If black plays away, white gets this extra forcing move. It's a bit painful. Like, this is going to be forcing too. So we have this shape where white has this wonderful wall, and then we'll probably play something towards the lower side. And it was very painful to be living on such a small scale. So black is probably going to curl around. And then Lilo is giving me this variation. And white plays away. And the point is that when black has already played this hane in the lower left area, there's no point for white to be answering the left side here. The whole side here, the value of it is pretty low, because black is into the side from the lower left corner and the upper left corner. And so the two moves here, black 5 and this stone, are sort of redundant to each other. They're both accomplishing the same thing of reducing white in the left side. And the fact that white doesn't have to answer that means that white is getting a more efficient position. So to go back to the game position. So black kicks here, and now plays this hane. This is a really exciting position here, where you would expect black to just play here, and white's going to cover here anyway, after which white still gets to force with this. So this is just like the variation I was showing you before.
Sure.
So the idea with this move is to have white cut and then play here. And in this case, this point and this point are interchangeable. They're miai. White's going to choose this one. And then black can continue by forcing with this move. Just getting that extra stone on the second line here is that much better. So in this variation, the cutting stone on the fifth line at E16, that's the fourth line. Well, it depends which way you see it. This stone, it still has some potential.
Right.
So after this, black will be thinking of extending to the fifth line here, and still has some potential with that, or could be thinking of playing an attachment here. Black is going to get something extra out of that stone. And so the idea with that exchange there is black plays that hane, inviting white to cut, and then black plays here. And so if black had black had simply played here, then white would not be answering that Hane the same way. White would probably be playing something like this to take away black's eye space, and it wouldn't be the same thing. So black is playing the Hane as early as possible to invite white to cut, making it more likely that white's going to cut. But white didn't cut. This is where it was sort of strange, and why I had to investigate the position, like showing you all these variations. White plays away because if white plays here, white's going to lose the control of the game. Black is going to take control by playing all these forcing moves. And you can see that black is taking the initiative all over the place, still has that potential there.
Gotcha.
So white would lose control, basically. So white plays away here, and the way white did it was sort of unexpected. But it does mean that white, since black has not made eyes in the corner yet, white is still looking to attack that black group. And it's completely, you would have expected white to be building territory in this area.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
By playing this stone, black has made it that much more difficult, and white just changed the plan because of that. Just changed everything white's going to try to do.
So this is actually a good time. Somebody just asked a really interesting question. I think with these AlphaGo games, frankly, I think these are hard questions for you, but I'm going to ask it anyway, which is, do you like one side or the other better at this point? And I say this right after this weird Tanuki, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, do you have a preference at this point?
No.
Okay, I called it. I mean, it's difficult, right?
It's sort of, a lot of it is counterintuitive, so it's already moves that I would have trouble finding or thinking.
Sure.
But it works in a strange way because black stones in this variation, they're not 100% alive yet. It's going to be difficult for white to attack them actually, but they're not. Since black has not taken this point in the corner, they're not 100% alive yet. And black was just making it relatively difficult for white to make a nice territory in this area. So for the time being, white has sort of given up on that.
Right.
White didn't have to do it.
No, and this is actually another interesting question. So going back to the E16 for black, and then C2, for white, and I think you just referred to these. I mean, if you saw this in one of your games, is it with that? Which C2? The black move right here. Yeah, E16.
Yeah, and white's gonna locally the move for white would be to cut here.
Right, but I'm saying, is that a move that you would have seen? That's
the Hane.
Yeah.
I think maybe. I think the idea that black that it would be good for white to be getting these 2 points in this variation. The idea that this is good for white, and black would like to be able to get to this position where black has played the extra move in the corner. So the idea of playing like this to make these 2 points interchangeable, that's something a human player would come up with. This is something that the logic behind it is understandable. Well, the logic itself is something that I devised actually. But it makes sense in the human context too.
Right. So
the
second question is that after the black Hane, the E16, the white Tanuki to go play over at C2.
That would be very it still looks sort of weird. Even if I thought of not cutting, I would be thinking of playing some different move. Like I might think of playing here, for instance. Or I might think of playing here. Or even if I wanted to play away, I would probably be thinking in context of playing something that supported these 2 stones. So I would be more likely, even if I played in the lower left corner, to be thinking of something like this, which would extend towards those 2 stones and make them. And so playing this way, it seems to be ignoring the upper left situation. And in a way, that's what it is, because black has made it a position where white doesn't have the optimal move. And so white's just not going to go into that game and it's going to play elsewhere, taking the profit elsewhere on the board. And that's a basic concept in Go, is that you're playing with the whole board position. It's all
Right.
balance and harmony. And part of that is just playing away when you don't have a good local move. So in a way, it makes sense, but it would be extremely difficult for me to find this move at c2.
Yeah. It feels so odd to you've got this fight going on in the upper left and to simply play away. It's just
And
I would find it extremely unnerving.
right. So in this position, yeah, Black actually plays a very unusual move for the local Joseki, because the local Joseki would be this way. And I think White would do the double hane. I'm actually not sure. White has a choice here of the double hane and the cut.
Okay.
Let's have White just do the double hane. And in this variation, White actually has a very nice side here. And you know, the distance, the fact that White is getting this much territory out of this wall here, it's very efficient. White's getting a nice territory for the wall. And I don't see in the near future Black invading that side, because Black does have that weak group in the upper left corner. So it's going to turn it into a very nice White territory. So White is heading towards this. This is what would usually happen. So Black plays a very unusual Joseki choice here, which is locally not so good for Black. But in this case, it was probably correct. Locally, I think this is just fine for White. In most game positions, this is going to be a local advantage for White.
Okay.
For instance, the way I would say it is that if you look at this position here, if White plays the double hane here, in my commentaries, I will call this good for Black, because Black has captured a stone here. And even if White connects here, Black already has a living shape. However, in the game, Black doesn't have that living shape. And so, for instance, if White does play something like this, you can see that a White attack here, without this Black stone on the first line, Black does not have eye shape. It's going to be a one move difference when Black tries to make a live here. It's going to cost Black one extra move. So that's a big difference. So that difference makes this bad for Black locally, and the other variation where Black has captured a stone is good for Black locally. That difference. Jumping here is a bit unusual.
Yeah.
Black could have.
I feel like I like White a little bit more in that lower left, but that's just me.
Locally, it's bad for Black. The fact that the left side here was valuable in this game. This area is valuable.
Yeah.
That's the reason that Black made this choice. Okay. And so Black plays here. Let's see what variation I put. Okay, if Black plays here and White plays here, those sides are building territories. This looks like a fairly even game, just about. But White A is a very nice move, the move at L5, where White is building the territory here and reducing the potential of Black's moyo on the right. And that moyo on the right is not territory yet. So Black plays here. This is actually what I would call a high point in the game. It's very exciting to see what Black is trying to do. So White seems to have 4 choices.
So wait. This is the actual game move?
This is the game move.
Okay, hold up.
Okay, so
if I were to play that move, I mean, just smack it against the stone?
Yep. Basically, you have to have at least 2 plans, because you don't know whether White's going to play on the left side or the right side. So which would you play on? Would you play on the right side or the left side?
I have 0 plans. I wasn't planning to smack this stone at all.
Well, what if you were White?
Well, I guess it depends if I want to be stroppy or not, right? I mean, instinctively, I kind of want to play on the right. Just yeah.
So you would play at m4.
Sure.
Okay. So the plan, if white plays m4, black is going to play here. And the point here is that the ladder favors black. So if white cuts here and then connects, the ladder is going to favor black. Oh, no, it doesn't, does it?
Yeah, I had that right out.
Oh, yeah, sorry. That was my mistake. So black's going to play here. I guess black is going to use the peep here to make a living shape. So I think this would continue. Let's see if I can regroup here. So something like this. Maybe something like this. And I don't know about the next move, but I think black might start from this side.
Is this good for black?
I think this is okay for black. You can see that white's on the left here.
Well, yeah, white's got a little bit of problem, yeah.
Yeah. And black still has some forcing moves because of the two stones here. Black has ideas to save the two stones with any stone in this area is going to be forcing. So I think this looks okay for black.
Wow.
So the idea there is to cover on the left side. Actually, if white connects, then black will connect here. And it's very similar, I guess. White jumps and something like this. Again, black is going to be putting pressure on this white wall here. So the wall is not 100% alive in this variation. I think this looks okay for black. And the point here is that the effect that white is getting towards the right, towards black's moil here, it's not direct. White's wall there's still a bit of distance between that and black. So like if white plays something like that, black still has plenty of room in the corner to make a living shape.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not as if black is going to get into serious trouble in that area. Well, black has reduced the lower side.
Wow.
So quite often you see AlphaGo trying. So the other move, you see AlphaGo trying to attack a wall like this. So this wall is not considered to be so strong. The other choice white has is locally to play here. In this case, again, black's going to play covering on the third line. And in this case, black is just building the moyo on the right and just pushing white back. You can see in this case, white is building on the K line. White's wall is on the K line, whereas if we go back to that other variation, if I can find it, if black just plays here, you can see white is building on the L line. So white's wall is on the L line. In the variation I was showing you where white plays on the left. In this variation, white was one line to the left. So that much smaller, the white territory on the lower side is that just one line smaller. Black's potential territory here is that much bigger. So this is black's plan.
Yeah, that looks too good for me. It looks too good for black.
Okay, so we've looked at this move, and we've looked at this move. So we've looked at these two moves. Locally, when your opponent attaches against you, you generally think of extending or playing a hane. So
Right.
Extending would be one of these two moves, and the hane is the curling around move, one of these two moves that we looked at. And showing you these two variations that I'm going to say they're both good for black. Do you want to try again to find a move for white?
For white?
So it's none of those four. Because
Yeah. I'm just.
in this position here, black has come afterwards. Like white started with a stone there and black came after white. So the two natural moves to think of are the two moves that we just looked at. Playing here or playing here. I said you had four choices, but extending is a defensive move, basically. Extending is generally a defensive move. And playing a hane like this is an offensive move. So when white has potential to attack, which seems to be the position here, you would usually be thinking of playing one of these hane moves, one of the curling around moves. But it turns out AlphaGo found something completely different.
Well, I've got a couple of folks out there who like L5 for some reason. I can't get behind that one. The one that's being suggested that I kind of like, I haven't read it. Q4 is being suggested, but you like L5?
L5 is just, this doesn't look so good.
Right, right.
Right.
It doesn't really look like a move.
It's a bit too wild. So playing here is actually the game move, so that was very good. Who was it who suggested this move?
Rubricus. Good call, Rubric. Oh, and always asking for that song. Two good calls there, guys. Nicely done.
Right.
Yeah. So that's it. But before we go on, that's a really good point, which is that sometimes you look at it, you look at a couple of different options, and you don't like any of the options, and so you pick the one that you sort of like the best, rather than saying I don't really like any of these and looking around for another one. So this is kind of a good lesson in that.
Yeah. Well, the only hint that you might say I gave was in this variation where I was saying the white wall was too far away from black's position on the right. White is taking it closer to home for black. And the way white's going to answer, so white answered a probing move with a probing move.
Sure.
The way white answers this is going to change depending on how black plays in the corner. If we look at the side here, the situation that's happening here and the situation that's happening here, turns out the corner is more urgent. So the corner is more important. So black's going to answer this move locally. Black has the same problem. Like black has to make a choice here. And I'm going to make the choice one of these two moves. In this case, actually, I think black should be playing an some kind of extension. So which do you want to try first?
Yeah, let's go for P3.
Okay. So in this case, now this is actually the game move. Now white plays an extension. And white is thinking of connecting up here because you see this move is flattened black on the left. So if black plays here, then white can play like this. And white has connected the group here, made this connected group and reduced black to the second line. So black's right side is down on the second line. It's a much smaller territory than it was before. And actually white's going to start attacking in the upper left with 6 there, B17. And so the fact that white got this exchange in first and black answered on the right, it means that black is that much flattened in the corner. White is leaning on black towards the moyo. So that was the game. Okay, so now we'll look at this move. In this case, now it's going to be difficult for white to get through here, right?
Yeah.
So like if white had started with this move and then played here, you would see black playing something maybe here or maybe here, playing more forcefully to separate this group and this stone that white has just played. Black would be coming between. So when white plays that extension there on the third line, the point is that white has played this first. After black plays here, now white can play the extension because white has the option of connecting up like this. So white started with this move. If black plays in the corner, then white will have that potential to connect up. So white's going to play here. So if black plays this way, now white doesn't have that potential connection. So white's going to play on this side. We're going to get into this variation, but now white has that much more space in this area. Because of that exchange, this exchange of this stone for this stone, it gives white that much extra space. So white can just play like this, and white actually has a 2-space extension on the side. White's going to be able to settle this group. So for instance, if white had started with that variation, let's just go back and start with that variation instead. If white had started with that variation, then after this exchange on the left, black would be able to play very forcefully in the corner and would not allow white to mess around like that. But with that exchange played first, that makes it that much easier for white to settle on the side. So this white probe there was a very special move. It was very, although I've managed to reason it out, and I think that it is feasible that a human player can understand it. So maybe a human could play it, but it would be called a brilliant move if it was played.
I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to call it a brilliant move. I love it. I love the sequencing there. It's really quite clever. So,
and of course, if black plays a Hane, white can curl into the corner like this, and white will be able to live in the corner. So this is locally, it's just going to work for white, basically. And the same thing if black plays on the other side, white will be able to come here, and it will be very similar to black playing this move. Actually, it's going to be very similar. Only white's going to get a little extra. So like something like this could happen, and something like this. You could see again that white is getting a nice position there, with the stones connecting up like that. So this is what white's trying to do. And in the game, black pulled back at the 3-3 point. So white pulls back here. And I showed you this variation where white connects up. So black plays here, and white plays here. And, you know, at first view, this looks like they're sort of playing some different game.
It's so wild, I know, right? It's like some sort of weird sub-parallel universe.
Here. And so, but when I spend the time to try to understand each single move, there is a logical reason that I can find for the whole thing. So it makes sense. And the result is that white got that much, basically got the 2 moves in a row on the lower side here to get a very nice shape, a very nice position here on the lower side. So I really like this exchange for white.
Steven's calling it socially distanced moves.
Those are pretty close, actually.
Yeah, they are.
You don't get closer than attachment.
No, I think you're talking about the playing back and forth in the two.
Interesting, yeah. Yeah, it was a very exciting sequence there. So now black is trying to make territory out of the right side. And white plays here. So this gets rid of the push through and cut there, like if white had played somewhere else. Let's have white play some random move. Black could always play here and cut and capture the stones in the corner. So white is removing that option for black. And black cuts here.
Yeah, and just to explain to folks, because I think that sequence is really, really big, right?
It's really big.
And I think people would tend, if you go back to before the S17 move.
Black.
Yeah, right, exactly. People would think more of a move, yeah.
You have to remember that this reinforces white in this area. And so when white does something like this, it's going to make a bit more of an attack on the black group in the upper left. Like black will not, should probably not be thinking about counterattacking with something like this, because this could be a bit dangerous for black. Just the fact that white has this extra strength in the position here with that captured stone, it's going to make it that much more difficult for black to do anything in the ways of being aggressive. And so there is, although the territorial gain by capturing the corner is big, it does lose something towards the left. And so it's not 100%. There is a drawback to it. So
right.
Yeah, so the fact that like it would be much more big if, for instance, if somehow the upper side position was more stable, like if white had played something like this and black had played something like this, then it would be much more valuable for black to be doing something like this. In which case, the upper left would not be an issue anymore. But the fact that there is this potential problem with white attacking in the upper left, it reduces the value of that slightly. In general, that kind of move would have been really big. So there's a point to what people are saying, asking why black didn't go for that. So I'm just pointing out that there are some drawbacks to it that we're probably making the difference in this case.
Mm-hmm.
And black cuts here. Usually this cut, it's not going to be okay for white to capture the stone. So at any point, black could have cut here and captured this white stone. But just to show you what might happen if white plays here, black extends once, and we get into this position. And it's going to be a fight to capture. Now, if white just extends, it's going to be bad for white. So if white plays here, black can just about any way what it works. But like for instance, black could play. Black could even do it this way. It doesn't really matter. This is just going to be an easy win for black. So the real question is what happens when white plays here, black cuts here. And this is where I stop the variation, but it's just very troublesome for white. Like if white pulls back here, black is just going to push through here, and there's no way white can stop this. It's already falling apart for white. And white can make it a bit more complicated by playing Atari here, but it's still not going to be a very happy result. Like in this case, again, black can push through here. And white cannot really stop this. Like this is obviously bad with the ladder pending and the left side bad. And, it takes a number of variations to spell it out, but in any case, it's going to be bad for white. This would be, it just doesn't work. And so there's a number of variations. It gets pretty complicated if I really worked at it, but the general idea is that it's just going to be very difficult for white. So you could expect that if black is too hesitant to do that, at some point, white could play a move like this, and everything would change there. So after white plays something like this, and we get to this position, for instance, then it would probably be okay for white to do that. Sorry, not that one. Now, of course, there's no problem for white. White has that with that extra stone here. Now this is going to be okay for white, and white can win the semi, the fight, the race to capture.
Wow.
So that would explain why black is playing this move, you might say, as a pro, because if at this point in the game, white cannot capture here. So you would think that white might play here, but then black would just play away. So black just wanted to make that exchange, and it would be valuable. Like the fact that later on, black's opportunity to do that might disappear. It would be a valuable exchange to have that in. Just that much more security for the black stones here. Black root. But white didn't answer. White just played here. After this, white does have that move in the corner, so white can play here later. And then it's interesting. Like I would have expected black to add a stone here, but black didn't do that. And I don't really have an explanation for that. Of course, the right side is big too. So we're starting to get into a fight here. Black is not allowing white to reduce the side. Like if black had answered that with something like this, it would be a relatively peaceful game. But black didn't do that. Black counterattacked, and we're going to get into a big fight here. And AlphaGo plays this peep a lot. It's a peep that actually is pretty effective. Where human players used to look at moves like this, or an attachment on the third line sometimes in positions like this, AlphaGo just goes and peeps here. And there is an immediate threat of pushing through and cutting. So it's not as if it's going to be easy for black. So black pushes on top. If black connects, of course, then there's just that much more opportunity for white to be playing something like this. Or in this case, could be something like this, looking at escaping from the ladder. And you see black has captured this stone on a ladder, but if white plays somewhere around the mark point, then there is the odds of escaping from the ladder. If white escapes immediately, at this point, it's still looking sort of like a geta, a squeeze at least.
Yeah.
In a way, it is already a kind of a ladder break in that way. And so we're jumping around a little bit, but white moves out here. So white is actually using this stone already as a ladder. The other way to play it would be to play something like this. And white could actually probably live on the side with a sequence, something like that. It would be no problem for white to live on the side. But the way AlphaGo did it was a lot more exciting.
That's very clever.
So white escapes, and black plays the geta, the net, and white plays away again. So white's dancing all over the place.
Yeah, he's just throwing stones.
Yes, throwing stones. White doesn't really want to escape from the geta at this point, but there is just a little bit of potential, you might say there. And now white just plays here. So white has, by playing this peep on the fourth line, the end result of that is that white is getting these extra forcing moves at A and B. And so white's getting some mileage out of it. And in fact, it's going to continue because now white does this. And it's going to be a pretty amazing sequence that white does here. White is basically just sending out a lifeline to this stone. But white has to be careful of the fact that white's not connected here and has all of these stones are making a very loose line here. They're not really connected completely.
No,
but white's going to deal with all of that. So white starts with this attachment, and now it's going to attach here. You can see white is threatening the wedge for the time being. Black plays a hane on top. So black's idea, you might say, is to play here and play an Atari and get rid of that problem. If white answered, black could just play on this side and capture white stones. But white cuts here. Now this is a beautiful sequence. Cutting here, putting a lot of pressure on black, showing the wedge here still, and Atari's on the outside. So all of these moves that white is looking at. And in this position, there's only one white stone that white has to keep alive. This is the one stone that's important, because white is looking for some potential on the outside, basically. But at the same time, white is trying to reduce black's territory on the right. So white is trying to be super efficient here. And at this point, white has succeeded to a certain extent, because white has reinforced the two-space jump here with some extra stones here. This connection is good enough now. Those stones are connected up. And white has forcing moves at A and B. So for instance, if black pushes through here, white can just bump against black, and black stones in the center now are going to be in trouble. So if black, if black plays here, now white's going to play this move. Now white's looking to cut here in the center. So black has these issues with black's group in the center. They're going to stall black from making territory on the right side. So It's a very annoying sequence that white has found here.
It's really annoying. It's like a magic trick.
You want to go through the sequence again then? It's just so amazing.
I mean, it was just like blip, 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 and
sort of random looking moves, but this This stone here is really working to keep black from surrounding the right side. It's this kind of a thorn in black's side there.
Well, what somebody was just asking was, I was wondering, I mean, did black make a mistake here? I don't see that black made a mistake, but just had I guess it was just there.
You know, black is AlphaGo too. You shouldn't be.
I know. So it must be okay for black too, I guess, is the answer.
Every time the answer to that is there's going to be a half-point difference. That's usually good enough. No,
Yeah,
it's usually a good try anyway.
yeah.
So black cuts here.
Okay,
So I
sure,
was
why not?
talking about variations where sometimes white could be capturing a black stone with this move. So black has dealt with that by playing one cut here. And now the black group on the left side is stable. So black moves on to the center. It looks like we might even be coming to an end game, but that's not how it's going to turn out.
I was just thinking, yeah, it definitely like okay, we had the exciting stuff, we had the magic trick, and now we can just wrap up the game. But I'm sure that AlphaGo has something more up its theoretical sleeve.
Well, after playing the defensive move here, connecting up to the right, white actually had this idea of cutting black. So this is, you could say it's not cutting black, but when black tries to save the center, that would be this move. And this is going to be really painful. It would just be too expensive, losing too much in the corner.
Ooh, ow.
So in
Oh,
the game, what black did was black played here, and it's a very complicated position because actually, well, black cannot afford to lose that group in the center of the board,
yeah,
and it's a co-like position.
it is.
White is actually paying for that by giving black the option of capturing the right side.
Okay, I
So
see that.
suddenly it's a very complicated situation again.
Is this like a counting situation or just,
And white could have just done nothing with this move, and it would have been an end game. It would have just been
yeah,
counting territory. White could have started with something
right.
like this, for instance, and it would have been a close game. But once white starts this, like white's taking chances too, and so it's just going to be a reading battle where black has to save the group in the center. At almost any point, black does not have a good enough co-threat to justify this. Like white actually has some co-threats. White has a co-threat here in the upper left corner. If it gets really to the last point in the code, then white could actually be using a co-threat here in the lower left corner. In some cases, white will have a co-threat here in the upper right. So white has some co-threats. In most cases, black's not going to be able to do this go. Of course, AlphaGo is going to find a way. But we do have to remember that there's that code that could happen, and the fact that black has that wedge at the mark point to get a big territory on the right. It's not immediately clear whether white's going to gain anything from this attack. But for
Yeah.
the time being, it looks almost like black's dead, so it's very dangerous for black too. So they start fighting this ko. So when white takes the ko first, it's an indirect ko that black can't afford to lose. But also, black's going to be taking the ko back at some point. And so we're going to see this ko, which is not yet dangerous. It's not as dangerous as the ko where black cuts here, but it's still a ko that's going to be going on for a while here. So black is, if black loses the ko this way, it means that black got to play this move, and one more move. So it would be 3 moves in the center are probably going to be good enough to give black a living shape.
Hmm.
So white is going to continue fighting the ko here. So that's what is going to try to attack black in the center of the board. So that's what this move on the left here at C9 is, just white's making a wall here, a connection here to attack black on a large scale. So black takes the ko. White plays a ko threat. And black takes the ko again. And we're going to see some tricky stuff here because white plays a ko threat. And black answers it with something that looks like a ko threat. But for the time being, this point here, if black gets to play this point, it would be really big. So this was forcing. I don't really know why black chose this timing to play this move. AlphaGo does like tricky timing like that. And then black answered. And this is threatening to cut black off here. I mean here. So that's a forcing move. And what black is doing here, sort of like sticking out its chin, because it's pretty obvious that white is going to peep here, right? Black is making a big ko threat. Black is making a big co-threat for this ko. So all of this, like it would have been a more natural defensive move for black to play something like this. This would be an intuitive move where black is connecting up in the center. It would sort of make sense. But of course, white would follow with this and would also get the peep here. And you can see that black is not getting any good eye space out of this. So black played here, sort of inviting white to play this peep, a very effective move. And then black plays here again. You can see that black's stones here are just getting cut to pieces. But the result of that is that black gets this huge co-threat. So black cuts here and plays this co-threat. And this is a co-threat that white cannot afford to ignore. So it's a very forceful sequence. It might look like black is losing a lot here, but when black wins the ko, maybe you're going to notice that this white group is starting to get cut off here.
Ah, yes.
That's what black is doing with stones that look like very grossly forceful co-threats. They're also on the left. So
whoa, the shoe is on the other foot.
And black just finishes the ko. So you can see black has got a very nice, a nice territory out of this ko. And black still has that wedge here to take the whole right side. Black has got a lot of profit out of that. And if black connects at this point, then white's group in the center is going to be in danger. So that's the.
I haven't read it real fast, but isn't something like L13 or something like that? Does that work?
L13 is a cutting point there. Yes. That's the point that black is looking at.
I mean, yeah, it looks pretty desperate for white at that point.
Well, meanwhile, the whole upper side looks like it could become white's territory.
Well, that is true. That is true.
So which is bigger? And it's very hard to say. Like it's simply, so black plays here, and white could probably kill that group. Let's see if I manage to do it. Like something like this would probably kill the group. Oh no, it doesn't kill the group. Sorry about that. This is a variation I made where black can actually push through at B next, and these 4 white stones are not very strong. So if black gets to push through at B, so like if we have white play something like this, and black pushes through here, it's a bit troublesome. Like I'm not sure exactly how I would do this. It's a very complicated situation here, where something like this might happen, where black just takes the whole right side. In this case, white did kill the black group. White like this and kill the whole black group. But of course, this is big too. I think this is probably going to be a win for black. But it's going to be pretty close, actually. It's close enough that I'm not very sure. So let's just game. White peeped here, and then attached here. And it still looks like white's trying to kill black, but actually it's not going to work out that way. So black plays 1 hane here. And if white had played here, we would have gotten into this variation where black does capture the center. In this case, black has opportunity to get something back on the upper side. So I'm having white connect here. The point is that if white continues with something like this, black has this move here, which is a double threat. This is a threat to either cut on the second line, or if white connects on the second line, black can play like this to capture white's stones. So black has this peep here. And if white answers,
that's nuts.
That's so much trouble for white. So white would have to answer there, and then black would be able to.
That's pretty nice.
So black would be able to take because white needs that extra move at A. It means that this area here black's going to be able to reduce it. And this looked like a win for black. Very small lead. When I say a small lead, it's going to be really close, obviously. Close enough that I don't really want to go into the details there.
Yeah. Yeah, my eyes are already. I'm having track of keeping you. Well, you warned me at the beginning. You know, I'm not sure which is alive and which is dead anymore.
So at this point, white is more interested in keeping this group in the center healthy than white is in trying to kill black on the upper side.
Okay.
And actually, by allowing black to live, white's going to get rid of the issue of this stone, because when black is alive in the upper left, black will not have the liberty to do that. So black plays here anyway. And it's the same position we were seeing before, where a peep here would be a double threat. A peep there would be a double threat, but when white has allowed black to live in the upper left, living in the upper left is more important. So black's not going to be doing that. So white has saved the center group. And it turns out black is alive now. So white could have played here. This is going to be a co-like position. Actually,
co-like, is that different than an actual co?
Like is better, the way to say it. It's not a co even. Because if white takes the co, black can disconnect it. It doesn't look like. Oh, this is a co. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Black would not connect there. Sorry. I'm getting confused. Black would play on this.
I'm glad I'm not the only one here.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm joining you. Yeah. So it's
let me give you a break to get some little tea and then ask a question. Somebody asked a while ago, and we've answered this before, but folks want to know. So roughly, and you probably haven't checked it, and maybe you shouldn't, but just give me a ballpark. Roughly, how many hours of study do you put into one of these games? And I know it's a big number.
I don't remember. I just lose track of time when I'm doing it. Really.
So like you start working on it, and then your wife is like, dude, it's Tuesday.
Yeah. And like these games have been around for years.
I know.
To them.
Yeah.
I come back to them. So it could be my just playing through the moves and I'm realizing stuff, or going through it with Leela, for instance.
Right.
And I sometimes go through it with Katago, because Katago gives me points.
Right.
And so I get an actual score. So I could be looking at the end game. So this is just another variation I created where white is getting into trouble in the center of the board when white tries to kill black on the upper side.
Oh, wow.
You can see there's a lot of variations.
I see it.
In many cases, it's going to involve black dying in the upper left. But the basic story is that if black can get something back in the center of the board, usually that's going to be okay for black.
Uh-huh.
So white is just protecting the center, and we're heading into another close game. Yeah, so I just can't really say how much time I put into it. But you can see now it's alive. And so although it looks like white was sort of making it easy for black to live there were actual reasons that white could not try to kill. So
that eye in the that's actually an eye.
That's an eye in the middle. And
it looks like it's a real eye. It's a weird looking eye, but it's not. All right, it works.
So this move was threatening K18. So if white had played here, black could have thrown in here and captured the 3 white stones. So that was the direct threat there.
Right.
And so white plays here, and black's alive. This is an eye here. 1 eye here, and 1 eye on the side. So now we're finally in the end game. But of course, there's this co thing. This is not really a co, but it's going to be one.
That's the name of this game. All our games have names. This one is the either the semi-co or the co thing.
And here, black is just trying to get a little extra mileage out of this move. If black had simply connected here, that would be relatively easy for white. So black plays the ko here. The idea is that if black can push white around like this, it's just that much extra territory that black is getting. So black's just trying to get a little extra territory out of it, and they're going to fight the ko bit. So they fight this ko. And here, it's about an even trade. And so eventually, we are entering an endgame. So I'll just
like an actual endgame.
It's an actual endgame.
Not like a fake AlphaGo endgame where.
Well, black didn't really make it to the endgame in this game, but it was probably going to lose. Black was probably going to lose by half a point. This is where it gets exciting again because white is supposed to connect at P7, right? White is supposed to connect here.
Yeah.
Apparently that wasn't good enough because white plays here. And if black cuts here, it's going to be a huge ko, which is dangerous for black too, because if white captures and connects, the black group in the center is going to die. So suddenly, in this peaceful endgame, we have the potential of a ko to a very important ko there. And you can see they're making it. Eventually, then white connects there. So white actually spent an extra move to get this stone. Just to go through that once more. So it's like this. White refused to answer that. And there's this big ko that's pending. Instead of playing it, black played this move, which is a big endgame move. And it's creating some local ko threats there on the upper side. And so white eventually connected here anyway. So it was basically a trade of this white stone at R6 for the black stone at L16. But it was a bit exciting for me.
Yeah.
When there was this big ko that was threatening to happen. And like suddenly black starts running out on the ladder and it's not working because of the cutting point here. It's just not working. And so the moves that black is playing here, they sort of resemble the stuff that AlphaGo was doing in game 4.
Yeah. I was just thinking that.
And it's just not working. And it's extremely close. So my conclusion is that black must be losing by a half point anyway. And black sort of is losing some extra points here. Just this move on the right side here was so big. Black lost a little extra. And so black is heading towards a crash in this variation. And pretty soon black is going to resign.
Wow.
I made a variation for this move because after this, I think pretty soon black is going to resign. So the game ended after this move. And black has lost some extra territory here. For instance, that move where black pushed through on the third line, this move here, locally it was better for black to play an attachment here. So I went back to move 255 and I made this variation for it. I tried to figure out the endgame. And I think I ended with white winning by half a point. And I'm not even 100%. I got it correct. It's as good as I could do. But it turns out white's going to win by, let's see what I said white wins by a quarter of a stone or 1.5 points if you count it with the Japanese rules.
Okay.
So that's my conclusion. That's the best I could do with the endgame. But the actual game, it ended at this point, where black resigned.
Right, but your point is that black, I mean, we've seen black, or whatever, AlphaGo will do that. If it's going to lose by half a point, it'll start to do some, nonsensical stuff.
Where actually it was a lot of, like this ladder on the left here.
Yeah, that's just weird.
Pointless stuff that really did resemble stuff that AlphaGo was doing in game 4.
Right.
So it was an unusual case where it was pretty extreme. Very extreme for what was a half point difference. Human players would still be having hope and playing it to the end very seriously.
Right. So it's a question that somebody's asking. So And it's always hard to ask with these AlphaGo games because it's AlphaGo versus AlphaGo. So, obviously both sides are playing really well. So I don't think it's, you can't really say the black made a mistake, right? I mean, I'll attempt to give a bit of an answer, then you can give an answer, which is, I mean, to me, one of the things that is both, completely beautiful about these games, and we've now done what this is 41 of this series and the other series, and then I don't know how we're going to survive the AlphaGo Zero games. Those are my right. Uh, but so one of the beautiful things about these games is that even asking the question of which is ahead is not even necessarily it's going back to my tennis thing, right, where I see two top tennis players playing, and they're both really really good, and you just see a really really good match, and on this particular day, one plays a little bit better than the other. And so that's often what it feels like with these AlphaGo games.
And it's just
Um,
like it's not as if the AlphaGo playing black was having a headache or something that day.
right,
It's
right.
just the way things happen to turn out, and it's just more exaggerated, I think, in human games. Like if you look at classical games, like I do sometimes, you can see one side just playing these brilliant moves, and the other side is getting pushed around a lot. It's sort of refreshing to see that it can happen to us in a similar way with AlphaGo playing against itself. It just demonstrates to me how a very small difference in the position, a very small advantage, can really jump out and look very like a big difference to the human eye. Like in
Hmm.
this game, it looks like there's an AlphaGo who is playing all the neat moves, and then there's an AlphaGo who seems to have some kind of a problem today. And it obviously, since it's a computer, that's not what's happening. It's
Right.
just the way the game turned out. White had that many more opportunities to play these brilliant moves, and it sort of makes it easier, gives me a different viewpoint on the classical human games and the games that I've played, where sometimes you get the feeling. I think I talked about this last time too, where I sometimes get the feeling where I've just played a completely stupid game when things just didn't turn out very well every time. And so it's sort of refreshing to see that it can happen with AlphaGo too.
Hmm.
Sometimes you have a sequence, a sequence of events that makes it just very difficult for one side to find any good options, and it makes it very good for the other player. And to see with AlphaGo, knowing that both players are supposed to be equal to each other, it makes it more obvious to me that that's happening.
So I guess just two last things before we wrap up. I mean, one is it just from what you're just saying, it makes me wonder, and this is just a much bigger question that we can come back to, maybe next week. But maybe this is just baked into the game, right? I mean, this is part of that thing that we reach for in each game, as you were saying.
Right.
I mean, and so maybe that's just part of the beauty of the game. And then let me go from the to something just really mundane. But I mean, does this raise questions about Comey?
Oh, I
I don't want
that,
to open that whole
that's
can of worms.
I my answer would be that these advantages or disadvantages, not only are they extremely hard to judge, but they are happening at some point of the game where we can't really judge whether a move is best or not best. Like in the opening, for instance, I was showing you moves and showing you that they have humans can find a logical explanation for that move. But as I was saying, for instance, in the lower left corner here, where white played that, let's see if I can find it. Oh no, that control is not working. Where white played away to the lower left corner,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so it was that move, yeah. So this move where white played to the lower left corner, I could explain how that could be reasoned out. But still, I don't know if I would choose that move, or even I don't even know if it's the best move objectively. There are points in the game where, especially in the opening, where I can understand why a player might want to play that way, but I just don't know whether it's the best move or not. And these are the points that are so hard for us to grasp, and even impossible for computer programs to score correctly, I think, where the whole thing is starting. So because of the very subtle differences caused by these moves, I think these are probably the cause of the disadvantages or advantages that change the game so dramatically later on, where one side is finding a lot of good moves. It probably starts in a part of the game where we can only have opinions, basically. We don't really know. And so there's no way we're going to figure that out. And so judging the size of Comey is just taking it one stage further and more distant from our understanding of the game.
Right. All right. Well, we will leave that conversation there. Thank you, as always, Michael. The other thing I would say about especially the AlphaGo games is that they are just clearly, mind busters, and this is a really good example of that. Yeah. But thank you so much for however many hours you put into them, and I know you love it and it's your thing, but still, it's really know that it is really appreciated. And being able to explain it so that we think we understand some of what you're talking about is really a wonderful gift.
Sometimes I understand too.
Thanks as always, the fabulous Stephen Hu is our producer all the way from his home in China, where he is safely socially distant. So we're happy about that. Thanks, of course, to all of you for joining us and your comments. And, your comments were very good this week. Really, I came up with some good moves there. So that's good. I'm sure it's all because of Michael's training. So, and of course, as always, a huge thanks to the American Go Association and all of its members. If you are a member, thank you. If you're not yet a member, you can check out usgo.org and find out about all the cool things that the Go Association has and the benefits of membership. And also check out Michael's social media, his YouTube, his Twitter, lots of cool stuff going on there. We'll have to see who else in his family does a video next. I think your sister, how's your sister doing with her farm? Is everything going all right with that?
The farm is okay. They were doing a lot of delivery to start with, so it's really well with the social distancing thing. So the farm is doing fairly well.
I can't wait to my next California trip. I had some very good meals there, so I look forward to that again. And also just a huge thanks to and a reminder to all of you that we still have a long ways to go on this pandemic, and Go is a long game. So everybody be careful out there. Yeah. And study the life and death on a board is always good advice, right? So we'll be back next week. I think we'll be back to our regular time, but stay tuned on usgo.org. And until we meet again, thank you, everybody, and be careful out there.